chair was always left empty until the night it pulled itself out and someone invisible took a seat. The invisible guest. The candlelight flickered, though there was no breeze. The dining room was silent, except for the faint, rhythmic creaking of a chair shifting ever so slightly. Claire froze mid-bite, her fork hovering just above her plate. Across the table, her husband, Daniel, looked up from his meal, his brow furrowed. "Did you move your chair?" Claire asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel shook his head. "No, but I thought I saw something move." They both turned their eyes toward the chair at the end of the table, the one that was always empty. It scraped against the wooden floor again, inching forward as if someone or something had just taken a seat. The air in the room grew heavy, an invisible weight pressing down on their chests. Claire's pulse quickened. She exchanged a nervous glance with Daniel before reaching out to push the chair back into place. But as soon as she did, the chair slid forward on its own. A cold shiver ran down her spine. "Maybe it's just the floor," Daniel said quickly, though the unease in his voice was evident. Claire forced a laugh. "Yeah, probably just an uneven floorboard." But deep down, they both knew the truth. They were not alone. The house had always been quiet, nestled on the edge of a small town. It was the kind of home where the loudest noises were usually the ticking of a clock or the occasional creak of aging wood. Claire and Daniel had moved in 6 months ago, excited to start fresh after leaving their cramped apartment in the city. The house was old but charming. High ceilings, wooden beams, and a spacious dining room that overlooked the backyard. At first, everything had been perfect. The house was peaceful, and their new life together felt like a dream. But recently, little things had started to feel off. It began with the subtle movements, a chair slightly out of place, the sound of footsteps when neither of them was walking, small items vanishing, only to reappear in odd locations. Claire tried to ignore it. Maybe she had just forgotten where she placed things. Maybe the house was settling as old houses do. But tonight, watching that chair move on its own, there was no more denying it. Something was in their house. After dinner, Danielle cleared the table while Claire poured herself a glass of wine. She took slow sips, staring at the empty chair. It hadn't moved again, but the memory of it sliding forward replayed in her mind. "We should set up a camera," Daniel suggested as he wiped down the counter. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Like a security camera?" He nodded. "Just in the dining room. If something's actually moving, we'll catch it on video." Claire hesitated. The idea of watching their own home for unexplained activity made her uneasy. But at the same time, wasn't it better to know? "All right," she agreed. "Let's do it." That night, Daniel set up his old camcorder on a tripod, pointing directly at the dining table. He made sure it had enough memory and battery to record overnight. "If anything happens, we'll see it," he said as he adjusted the settings. Claire pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. "I hope we don't." They went to bed early, but neither of them slept well. Every little creak of the house sounded louder than usual. Claire lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening for anything out of the ordinary. By morning, the camera was still in place, undisturbed. Daniel grabbed the camcorder and sat at the kitchen table, fast-forwarding through the footage. Claire leaned over his shoulder, her coffee mug clutched in both hands. The video played back in silence, showing their empty dining room, the dim glow of the streetlights filtering through the windows. Nothing happened. Hours sped by in mere seconds on the screen. The chairs remained still, the table undisturbed. Maybe we imagined it, Claire murmured, letting out a small, relieved sigh. Daniel reached the last few minutes of the recording. He was about to turn it off when something caught his eye. The chair at the end of the table moved. Not a slight shuffle, not the gradual slide of an uneven floorboard. It pulled out smoothly, deliberately, before stopping as if someone had just sat down. Then, for a brief moment, the video darkened, the faintest shadow, barely distinguishable from the dim room, flickered in the chair. And then, just as quickly, it was gone. Claire's breath hitched. Daniel pressed pause, his face pale. "Tell me you saw that." She nodded slowly, her throat dry. The chair had moved, and for a moment, something had been sitting there. Something they couldn't see. Claire and Daniel stared at the paused video, their breath held, as if exhaling might bring whatever they had just seen into the room with them. "That was real," Claire whispered, gripping the edge of the table. "We weren't imagining it." Daniel rewound the footage, playing it again in slow motion. The chair pulled out in an eerily smooth motion. Then the faintest, almost imperceptible shadow appeared, just for a moment. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't a smudge on the camera lens. It was something. Claire's fingers tightened around her coffee mug. I don't know what's worse, the fact that the chair moved, or the fact that something was sitting there. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his expression unreadable. It doesn't make sense. Shadows don't just appear and disappear. Claire swallowed hard. "What do we do?" Daniel hesitated, then said, "We need to set up more cameras, different angles. If this wasn't a glitch, we'll see it again." The thought of actively trying to capture something unseen sent a shiver down Claire's spine. But at this point, they needed answers. That evening, they positioned 2 more cameras, one in the dining room from a different angle, and another in the living room just in case. As night fell, an unsettling feeling settled over the house. Claire couldn't shake the sense that something was watching them, lingering just out of sight. "I don't like this," she admitted as she climbed into bed. Daniel slid under the covers beside her. "Me neither. But we need to know what we're dealing with." Neither of them slept well. Claire tossed and turned, every small sound making her heart pound. A soft creak in the hallway sent a jolt of fear through her. But when she strained to listen, the house remained silent. Morning couldn't come fast enough. At sunrise, Daniel grabbed the cameras and brought them to the kitchen table. Claire, still wrapped in a blanket, sat beside him as he played back the footage. For the first few hours, nothing happened. The dining room remained still, the house eerily quiet. Then, around 3:14 a.m., the chair at the end of the table shifted again. Just like before, it slid back slightly, pausing for a moment, then pulled out completely. Claire held her breath. Then, the air around the chair darkened again, but this time, it lasted longer. The shadow was barely visible, just a flicker of something unnatural, but it was there. And then, slowly, the shadow turned, not physically. There was no defined head, no clear movement, but the shape of it shifted, like something unseen had just noticed the camera. Claire's fingers dug into her blanket. It knows we're watching. Daniel said nothing, his hand frozen over the pause button. The footage continued. A minute passed, then 2. The chair remained pulled out, the shadow lingering just on the edge of visibility. And then, the camera screen flickered. The image distorted for half a second, then went black. The recording stopped. Claire's blood ran cold. What happened? Daniel pressed buttons, trying to get the footage to resume. I don't know. The battery was fine. The memory wasn't full, it just shut off. Claire stared at the dark screen, like something didn't want us to see more. A heavy silence filled the room. Daniel checked the second camera, the one in the living room. It had recorded the dining room from a distance, catching part of the table in view. He fast-forwarded to the same time. 3:14 a.m. They saw the chair move. They saw the shadow appear, but then something different happened. Just as the camera in the dining room shut off, the living room camera picked up something else. A faint, almost imperceptible movement near the hallway. A dark blur shifting just out of frame. Something had been moving through their house. Claire covered her mouth. Daniel, that's not just in the dining room. It's in here with us. Daniel's jaw tightened. We're not staying here tonight. That evening, Claire packed a small bag, while Daniel made arrangements for them to stay at a nearby hotel. The idea of spending another night in the house, knowing something unseen was moving around them, was unbearable. As Claire zipped up her suitcase, she hesitated at the bedroom door, looking toward the hallway. The house was quiet. Too quiet. She exhaled shakily. Just one more night, then we're gone. Daniel double-checked the cameras. I'm leaving them on. If anything else happens, we'll see it. They locked up the house and left, neither of them daring to look back. At the hotel, Claire finally felt like she could breathe. The bright lights, the steady hum of city sounds outside. It was comforting. Normal. Daniel plugged his laptop into the hotel's Wi-Fi, remotely accessing the live feed from their cameras. Claire sat beside him, gripping his arm. I don't know if I want to watch. Daniel hesitated. We need to know if something happens while we're not there. For the next hour, they watched their empty home. The dining room was still, the living room untouched. Then, movement. A faint shift in the dining room. The chair at the end of the table pulled out again. Daniel's grip on the laptop tightened. It's happening. Then, from the hallway, a shadow flickered, this time moving faster, more defined. And then, right before their eyes, the screen distorted. Static. Then, black. The feed cut out. Claire's breath caught in her throat. Daniel. He tried refreshing the stream, but the connection was lost. Something doesn't want us watching. The room felt colder. Claire wrapped her arms around herself. What if it's not just in the house? Daniel stared at the blank screen. Then we have a bigger problem than we thought. Claire couldn't shake the feeling of unease, even in the brightly lit hotel room. The static-filled laptop screen felt like a silent message. Something in their house didn't want to be seen. Daniel sat stiffly, staring at the darkened feed. He tried refreshing the page again, but the connection remained dead. It's not the internet, he muttered. It's like something shut the cameras off. Claire swallowed hard. Then we're being watched too. The thought sent a chill through her. She wrapped her arms around herself, glancing toward the hotel window. Outside, the streetlights flickered faintly, the city alive with distant traffic. It should have felt safe, but knowing something unseen had been moving in their home made her doubt everything. Daniel exhaled sharply and shut the laptop. "We'll go back tomorrow morning, in daylight. We'll check the cameras, grab whatever we need, and figure out what to do next." Claire hesitated. What if something is waiting for us? Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for her hand, giving it a firm squeeze. "Then we'll deal with it together." Despite his reassuring words, neither of them slept well that night. The next morning, the drive back to the house felt longer than usual. The neighborhood looked the same, calm, quiet, ordinary. But the moment Claire and Daniel stepped inside, the air felt heavier. Everything looked untouched. The furniture remained in place. No doors had been left open. Yet something about the house felt different. Claire rubbed her arms. "It's colder in here." Daniel checked the thermostat. It was set to its usual temperature, but the house felt several degrees colder than it should have been. He shook his head. "Let's grab the cameras and check the footage." They moved cautiously through the house, collecting the equipment. When Daniel retrieved the camcorder from the dining room, he hesitated. The chair at the end of the table was still pulled out. He frowned. "I don't like this." Claire had the laptop ready as Daniel plugged in the camera. The footage began to play, fast-forwarding through the night. Hours of stillness passed. Then, at exactly 3:14 a.m., the screen flickered. The chair slid back. A shadowy figure appeared again, darker this time, more defined. It lingered longer than before, its shape shifting slightly, as if adjusting itself. Then, in slow, deliberate movements, it turned toward the camera. The screen flickered violently. A distorted whisper crackled through the speakers, too faint to understand. Then, just before the camera cut off completely, something changed. For the briefest moment, the shape in the chair became clearer. Not just a shadow, not just a blur, a figure, a person. Claire gasped, covering her mouth. "That's..." Before she could finish, the screen went black. Daniel's hands trembled as he paused the video. His voice was tight. That was someone sitting there. Claire's pulse pounded in her ears. "But we know no one was there." Daniel rewound the footage, pausing at the clearest moment. The figure had no distinct facial features, just a dark outline of a person, a presence. Claire's stomach twisted. "It's getting stronger." Daniel clenched his jaw. "I think it knows we're watching." And then, the lights in the house flickered. Claire jumped, spinning toward the nearest lamp. The bulb dimmed, then brightened, as if something was interfering with the electricity. Daniel shot to his feet. "We're not alone right now." A deep, slow creak echoed through the house. The chair. Claire turned toward the dining room. The chair they had just seen in the footage, the one that had been pulled out, was now tucked neatly back under the table, as if someone had just pushed it in. Claire's breathing quickened. "Daniel, we need to leave." Daniel nodded, grabbing the camera. "We'll go, but we need to take this to someone who can explain it." Claire hesitated. "Who would believe us?" Daniel thought for a moment. Then an idea crossed his mind. "Professor Langley." Claire blinked. From the university, he teaches paranormal history. He's written books on unexplained phenomena. Daniel's voice was firm. If anyone can tell us what's happening, it's him. Claire took a shaky breath. Then let's go. Now. Without another glance at the dining room, they grabbed their bags and hurried out the door. As Daniel locked the house behind them, neither of them noticed the faint outline of a shadow standing just beyond the doorway, watching them leave. The search for answers, the drive to Professor Langley's office took nearly an hour. Claire had only met him once before, a reserved, intelligent man who seemed skeptical of everything. But when Daniel called ahead, Langley had agreed to meet them immediately. Langley's office was cluttered with books, old manuscripts, and newspaper clippings about supernatural events. He sat behind his desk, adjusting his glasses as he watched the footage Daniel had transferred to a flash drive. When the screen flickered and the shadowy figure appeared, the professor leaned in, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he exhaled. This isn't just a residual haunting. Claire's hands tightened in her lap. What does that mean? Langley folded his hands. Most hauntings are echoes, memories of the past repeating themselves. But this, he tapped at the screen where the figure had appeared. This is different. Daniel's jaw tightened. How? Langley met his gaze. Because it knows you're there. Claire's stomach sank. Langley continued, his tone serious. A presence that acknowledges the living is not just a passive entity. It's aware. It's intelligent. Claire shuddered. So, what does it want? Langley hesitated before answering. It depends. Some entities seek attention. Others want something more. Daniel straightened. How do we stop it? Langley leaned back in his chair, considering. First, we need to know what it is. Spirits attached to places are different from those attached to people. Claire felt a cold chill creep down her spine. You think it's attached to us? Langley didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for an old book on his shelf, flipping through its pages. Tell me, he said, glancing up. Have you noticed any changes outside the house? Claire's breath caught. The hotel, the cameras failing, the feeling of being watched, even when they weren't home. Langley sighed. Then you're not dealing with a house haunting. He closed the book with a soft thud. It's following you. A heavy silence filled the professor's office. Claire and Daniel exchanged a nervous glance, the weight of Langley's words pressing down on them. It's following you. Claire swallowed hard. What does that mean? That it's attached to us? Langley leaned forward, his fingers laced together. Some entities are tied to locations, repeating their presence like an echo. But others, he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Others become fixated on individuals. Daniel's grip on the flash drive tightened. So, what do we do? How do we break this? Langley exhaled slowly. First, we need to understand what it is. He reached for an old notebook, flipping through its yellowed pages. Tell me everything. When did this start? Claire took a shaky breath. The first time we noticed anything was during dinner. The chair moved on its own. Langley nodded. And before that, any strange occurrences? Daniel thought back. Not really. No nightmares, no cold spots. It just started one night. The professor frowned, flipping another page. That's unusual. Most hauntings build gradually. His gaze sharpened. Did you bring anything new into your home recently? An antique? A second-hand object? Claire's heart skipped a beat. The mirror. Daniel turned to her. The one from the estate sale. Claire nodded. We bought it a few weeks ago. It's in the hallway. Langley's expression darkened. A mirror. Claire shifted uneasily. Why? What's wrong with that? Langley tapped the notebook. Mirrors are believed to be portals, gateways between the living and the dead. If the entity manifested shortly after you brought it home, there's a strong chance it's connected. Daniel's jaw clenched. So, if we get rid of the mirror, will it stop? Langley hesitated. Not necessarily. If it's already attached to one of you, destroying the object might not sever the connection. A chill ran through Claire. Then what do we do? Langley closed the notebook. We need to test something first. A dangerous experiment. That evening, they returned home with Langley. The house was quiet, untouched since they had fled. The tension in the air was almost suffocating. Langley instructed them to sit in the living room while he set up a small ritual. Nothing dangerous, just a way to provoke a reaction. He placed a single candle on the coffee table and lit it. If the entity is present, he explained, this will act as an invitation for it to reveal itself. Claire shuddered. And if it does? Langley's eyes were serious. Then we'll know what we're dealing with. The three of them sat in silence, watching the flickering candlelight. The minutes ticked by. Nothing happened. Then, a soft creak echoed from the hallway. Claire's breath hitched. She turned slowly, her gaze locking onto the mirror. The reflection of the hallway was perfectly normal, except the chair in the dining room. In the mirror, it was pulled out, but when Claire glanced toward the real dining room, it was still tucked under the table. Her pulse quickened. Daniel. Daniel followed her gaze and froze. The chair in the reflection shifted, slowly, as if someone unseen were sitting down. Daniel's hand found Claire's. Professor. Langley's expression remained unreadable, but his voice was calm. Don't break eye contact with the mirror. Claire's breathing was uneven. The candlelight flickered violently, casting moving shadows against the walls. Then, in the reflection, something else appeared. A dark shape, faint at first, then growing more defined. It sat at the table, its form hazy but unmistakable. No face, no eyes, just a silhouette of something there. Claire's entire body tensed. What is it? Langley's voice was low. A presence, and it's aware of us. The shadow in the mirror shifted, just slightly, as if turning toward them. Then, the candle's flame snuffed out. The room was plunged into darkness. Claire gasped. Daniel reached for his phone, switching on the flashlight. The beam of light cut through the dimness, revealing the real dining room. The chair was still tucked under the table, but the mirror, the chair in the reflection, was empty again. Langley exhaled slowly. It's stronger than I expected. Claire's hands were shaking. What do we do? Langley turned to Daniel. We need to move the mirror. Daniel hesitated. Move it where? Langley's gaze was unwavering. Somewhere far from the house. And we need to trap whatever's inside. The final confrontation. An hour later, They carried the mirror outside. The wind had picked up, rustling through the trees as they loaded it into the back of Daniel's truck. Langley pulled out a small pouch of white powder, salt, mixed with other protective herbs. This should weaken its hold, he explained, circling the mirror and sprinkling the mixture along the ground. Claire hugged herself, watching anxiously. And then what? We take it somewhere isolated. Langley's voice was firm. A place where no one else will stumble upon it. Daniel started the truck. There's an old clearing past the highway. No houses, no people. Langley nodded. That'll do. As they drove, Claire kept glancing at the mirror in the back seat. The reflection was normal. No shadow, no movement, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching. When they reached the clearing, Langley instructed them to set the mirror against a tree. He pulled out a small pocket knife, carving strange symbols into the wood behind it. This will seal it, he explained. Once it's done, we leave. We do not look back. Claire's stomach twisted. And that's it, Langley gave her a knowing look. If we're lucky. As he completed the final marking, the air around them grew unnaturally still. The wind died. The forest became eerily silent. Then, a whisper. Claire stiffened. Did you hear that? Daniel's grip tightened on her arm. Yes. Another whisper. Low. Indistinct. The mirror's surface rippled, like water disturbed by an unseen force. Langley didn't hesitate. Get in the truck. Now. Claire and Daniel bolted for the vehicle. Langley was right behind them. As soon as they were inside, Daniel floored the gas, kicking up dirt as they sped away. In the rearview mirror, Claire caught one last glimpse of the clearing. The mirror's surface had turned pitch black. Something inside was watching them go. The drive home was silent. Claire gripped the seatbelt tightly, her knuckles white. Daniel kept his eyes on the road, the headlights cutting through the dark, winding path. In the back seat, Langley sat stiffly, watching the rearview mirror as if expecting something to follow. Claire finally broke the silence. Do you think it worked? Langley hesitated before answering. It should have. But entities like this don't always follow the rules. Daniel's jaw tightened. What does that mean? Langley exhaled. We did what we could. The mirror is sealed, the entity contained, but... He glanced at Claire. If it was truly attached to one of you, there's always a chance it could find another way. Claire's stomach twisted. So, we're not safe. Langley didn't answer immediately. We'll know soon enough. A false sense of security. When they arrived home, Claire hesitated before stepping inside. The house felt different. Lighter, perhaps. Or maybe it was just wishful thinking. Daniel checked the dining room first. The chairs remained neatly in place. No strange movements, no cold drafts. Everything was just as they had left it. Claire let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Maybe it really is over. Langley walked slowly through the house, scanning each room. Keep an eye out for anything unusual. If the entity tries to manifest again, it'll be weaker without the mirror. Hours passed. Nothing happened. No whispers. No shifting shadows. No inexplicable movements. For the first time in weeks, Claire and Daniel allowed themselves to relax. That night they went to bed without fear. The sound in the night Claire awoke to darkness. At first, she wasn't sure what had stirred her. She blinked, listening. The house was silent. Daniel's slow, steady breathing beside her was the only sound. Then, a soft creak. Claire's heart had skipped a beat. She turned her head toward the bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. Hadn't they closed it? Another creak. This time it came from the hallway. Claire's throat went dry. She reached out, shaking Daniel's shoulder. "Daniel," she whispered. He stirred. She didn't get a chance to respond. The closet door creaked open. Daniel bolted upright. What was that? Claire clutched his arm. The closet. Silence. Danielle grabbed his phone from the nightstand, switching on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the closet. Empty. No shadow. No movement. Nothing out of place. Daniel sighed, rubbing his face. It's just nerves. But Claire wasn't so sure. The bedroom door was open too. Danielle frowned. Maybe the wind. Claire shook her head. The windows are closed. A deep unease settled in her chest. Something felt wrong. The return. The next day, Langley called to check on them. "We heard something last night," Claire admitted. Langley was silent for a moment. "Did you see anything?" "No," she said. "Just the closet door opening on its own." Langley sighed. "That's not good." Daniel frowned. "I thought you said the mirror was sealed." "I did." Langley's voice was grave. "But if the entity was attached to you, it may not need the mirror anymore." A chill ran through Claire. "So, what do we do?" Langley hesitated. "I'll come over tonight. We need to make sure it hasn't anchored itself here permanently." The final confrontation. That night, Langley arrived with the supplies. A bundle of sage, a vial of holy water, and a small silver charm. "We're going to do a cleansing ritual," he explained. "If the entity is still here, this should drive it out." Claire and Daniel sat on the couch as Langley moved through the house, lighting the sage and whispering an incantation. The air filled with the scent of burning herbs, thick and heavy. First, nothing happened. Then, a thump echoed from the hallway. Claire jumped. "Did you hear that?" Langley's grip on the sage tightened. "Stay here." Daniel stood. "No way. I'm coming with you." Together they moved toward the hallway. The air felt denser, charged with something unseen. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. Langley muttered a sharp command in Latin. The sage smoke thickened, swirling unnaturally. And then, a shadow moved. Claire gasped, gripping Daniel's arm. The shape was barely there, more like a distortion in the air than a solid figure. Langley raised the charm. "You do not belong here." A low, distant whisper filled the air. It wasn't words, just a sound, like wind rushing through hollow spaces. Langley pressed forward. "Leave." The shadow twitched, then lunged. The hallway light burst, plunging them into darkness. Claire screamed. Daniel grabbed her, pulling her back. Langley tossed the vial of holy water. It shattered against the floor, the liquid spreading in a thin mist. A horrible, shrill sound filled the room. Then, silence. The air felt lighter. Claire's breath came in gasps. Did it work?" Langley exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's gone." Daniel looked unconvinced. "For good?" Langley hesitated. "For now." a lingering presence. Days passed. Nothing strange happened. No moving chairs, no whispering voices, no flickering lights. Claire and Daniel finally felt safe again. But deep down, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. One evening, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing her hair. Daniel was in the kitchen, washing dishes. She stared at her reflection, her mind still haunted by everything they had been through. Then, a cold shiver ran down her spine. She wasn't sure why, but suddenly, she felt like she wasn't alone. Slowly, hesitantly, she glanced over her shoulder. Nothing. Claire exhaled, shaking her head. Just my imagination. She turned back to the mirror and froze. In the reflection behind her, a chair in the dining room moved ever so slightly. Claire's breath hitched. She turned around. The chair was exactly where it should be, but in the mirror, it was pulled out just a little, as if something was sitting there, watching, waiting.